and that's where we can access it in its true magnitude. So the body is a biological computer. It has the ability to think for itself, and the idea is to get us to believe that is who we are. I call it a genetic spacesuit. You know, if you're going to experience the moon or another planet, you need an outer shell. If you're going to experience this reality, consciousness needs an outer shell. And that's what makes racism so utterly insane. You know, it's like we're all one consciousness having different experiences. And what if you had a couple of spacemen on the moon, and one said that he didn't like this spaceman because he had a green spacesuit that was made in a different company to this spacesuit that was a red spacesuit or a white spacesuit? You'd say, bang their bloody heads together, don't be so stupid, it's just a bloody spacesuit. Well, that's what we do when we get caught in racism. Racism is identifying, it's one of the classic, most profound ways that confirm that you are identifying reality with the vehicle, the computer, and not with consciousness, which is who you are. We are all one consciousness. This is the irony. I don't care if you're bloody Jewish or black or middle class or white American, we're all the same consciousness. Ultimately, if you go high enough, having different experiences. And we get divided and ruled by self-identity with this. That's what racism is. Utterly bloody stupid. Now, humans. What are humans? Humans are software programs. Different software programs running through the body computer. We say these things, I'm only human. No, you're not. That's an experience you're having. It's the vehicle's program which manifests as what we call the human body and the human being. Software program. This is in the San Francisco Chronicle, an article on DNA. DNA is a universal software code. From bacteria to humans, the basic instructions for life are written with the same language. It's all a computer game of great sophistication, and this is part of it. And the difference between a mouse and a human in DNA code terms is fractional compared with a difference in the way the body manifests. DNA is made up of 4 codes, A, C, G, and T. I think I'm made up of G and T and G and T, me, but there you go. A, C, G, and T. And these different codes, how they relate to each other decides how the physical form manifests, whether it's a wolf or an ant or a virus or a human being. And it's interesting how the codes on the computer's screens in the Matrix movie, which was very, very close to reality, not totally, but very close to reality in so many ways, very illustrative of the way we decode reality into an illusory physical state. But I'm quite right, those codes were very much like the DNA codes in so many ways, because on one level, this reality, like I say, is digital. And I'll get to that as we go along. Now, what they're doing now, of course, is having what they call computer-brain interfaces, where they're connecting computers to the brain, and the brain is working the computer without hands being used. And the reason they can do that is quite simple. They're connecting 2 computer systems. One extraordinarily more sophisticated than the other, but still the same in theme. The human body ticks box after box after box in terms of a highly sophisticated computer system. When your computer gets a virus and you start to see a problem, it maybe slows down or whatever. And as the virus gets more and more a hold of the computer, I've had this done to me, eventually the computer won't even switch on anymore. And what do we say? Hey, my computer's dead. And what happens at what we call human death is the computer shuts down and who we are leaves. Eternal consciousness leaves. Our computers go into sleep mode where it shuts everything down and everything just ticks over. That's what we do. Our computer shuts down and ticks over. We call it sleep. Although I have to say, I didn't get any last night. Crikey. I can't get out of British time. I've been here a week. And the bad news is, this is the time I should be asleep. So, I'll do my best. Norton antivirus and all these antivirus things, what do? They protect the computer from external attacks, viruses and what have you. And that's what the human immune system does in an extraordinarily more sophisticated way. Protects the computer system, the body computer system, from attacks. And just with like computer antivirus systems, if a new virus comes out, which it's not programmed to repel, then the computer gets completely taken over. This is what happens with the human computer system, antivirus system, which is why when the Europeans went to North America, they took with them smallpox, which the Native Americans had not encountered before, and bingo, they fell like flies because their antivirus system, their immune system, couldn't cope. On the left is or my left, your left, yeah, my right, is a picture taken at the Necker Hospital in Paris when they put a tracer dye into the acupuncture points of the body, and they photographed it, the meridian system, etc. And I looked at that when someone showed it to me, and it reminded me immediately of a motherboard, which is basically what that meridian system is. It's energy, and that energy is information. Everything in this reality is information in various forms: vibrational information, digital information, electrical information, being decoded. That's how the whole thing comes together and manifests. And what they found is that when this energy, which the Chinese in acupuncture call qi, is going around this system too slowly, from optimum, people manifest some kind of illness or dis-ease. Why? Because the qi is information, and if the information is not passing around quick enough, then the body computer does not function as it should. When a computer on your desktop gets a virus, what's the first thing that people say most often? Hey, my computer's slow, because the information's not passing around as it should. And what acupuncture does is put the acupuncture needles in to manipulate the flow of this energy, bring it back to optimum, and therefore physical health. In a computer, the central processing unit, the CPU, is the processor of information, the information traffic. What they call in computer parlance the CPU is the brain of the computer. Very appropriate, because this is our CPU, which is constantly filtering and dealing with the information traffic, passing it around the body, information, receiving information back from different parts of the body, and it is responding according to the information that we're receiving. And that's how we stay healthy, that's how, in optimum terms, we think straight and we have balanced emotions. If you intervene into that process, you can manipulate people mentally, emotionally, and physically. So in the end, it's all about the way we are decoding reality into this physical world which only exists in our head. And you can intervene into that, like I say. The DNA, the genetic structure in general, is like the hard drive that holds the base information and takes on more information as you experience. And like I say, it's not just the physical level, there's an energetic level. In fact, the body's just energy, really. But there's an energetic level, and together, that forms the body-computer entity. And what we call races, cultures, and all these different expressions of the human family, they are just software programs which we have to experience. And the software programs are very clear when you get into some of this stuff. This guy is called William Sheridan. And he was in a New York hospital waiting for a heart transplant. And to take the time as he was waiting, he joined an art therapy class. And he was, like me, a rubbish artist. And that's the kind of stuff he was drawing, at best at the top. And then he had this heart transplant, and as he was recovering, he went back to the art therapy course, and he started producing much more sophisticated drawings. And he eventually met the mother of the man whose heart he was given and asked the obvious question, because no one could explain what had happened, including the art therapist lady who was bewildered by the difference. He asked the mother if the donor had any interest in art, and she said interest. He wanted art materials more than toys by the age of 18 months. He was crazy about art. And there's a doctor in America who's done a major study on this, of how when people receive transplanted organs, and again, the heart is the most obvious in this, the most powerful in this, but other organs too, like the lungs, people have in significant numbers taken on the aptitudes and the personalities or personality traits of the donor. Why? Because it's a download, in a sense. You are taking information, energetic information. We decode it as physical, but it's energetic information, and you're downloading it into another computer, and that information then becomes available to that computer and starts to affect the way that it perceives reality. My great friend in Africa, Credo Mutwa, the Zulu shaman who's closing in on 90 now, he said to me, I talked to him about this, he said in the days of Africa when there was cannibalism, he said they had a golden rule that you must always boil the person to a certain temperature, otherwise if you eat them, you become them. It's an old African kind of rule, because it's information. And nothing identifies us more, I guess, with being the body computer as opposed to it being an experience than being a man or a woman. That's who we are. I'm a man or a woman. No, it's the experience we're having. Very big difference. And there's nothing wrong with being a man or a woman. It's an experience. Nothing wrong with it at all. And, all the best with it, except that we need to understand it's an experience, and then don't get caught in the fact that it's who we are. A few years ago now, maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, in England, there was a story in all the papers of Freaky the chicken. Freaky the chicken started out as a hen laying eggs, and then had this massive, for some reason, burst of testosterone produced, and started growing a comb, started crowing at dawn, and chasing the hens. And all that had happened is there had been a chemical change in the computer, and Freaky went from a woman to a man. And of course you see this in the manipulation of sex change operations and stuff like that. If what we are is a man or a woman, how can the body computer change from one to the other with a chemical change? It's not who we are, it's an experience. I saw this on the BBC website. Scientists have been able to take control of flies' brains to make females behave just like males. Researchers genetically modified the insects so that a group of brain cells that control sexual behavior could be switched on by a pulse of light. The team was able to get female fruit flies to produce a courtship song, behavior usually seen only in males. Again, it's the computer being manipulated. When I'm writing sometimes, I get up early in the morning in England, and when the sun comes up, the birds start singing. As soon as the sun comes up, the birds start singing. Now, is there someone with a baton saying cue? They just start singing. I mean, here we have Freaky the chicken. When he sort of got the testosterone burst, he starts crowing at dawn. Who told him? No, the computer program was running. Just crowed at dawn. Another thing that we have, look at the time, another thing we have, are we doing all right, is emotions. We are our emotions. So many people who have near-death experiences, and I've read a lot about this, and I've talked to a number of them, they say that when we left the body, we did not feel emotion in the way that we did in the body. Because emotion is a chemical expression. And chemicals can, if they're introduced to the body, can affect our emotional state. There was a woman in England a few years ago who, story again in all the papers, 40 years ago, out of nowhere, she went into a clinical depressive state, 40 years, in and out of institutions. After 40 years, which is why she was in the papers, someone said to her, "Can you think of anything that happened about the time that this started?" And she said, "The only thing I could think of," she said, "is I had 19 tooth fillings with mercury." So she was advised to get the mercury taken out, which she did, and go on a mercury detox, and the depression disappeared as fast as it came, and never to return. "I've just found myself again," she said. Now, if you'd have said to her over that 40 years, "Who are you?" she'd say, "I'm a manic depressive." No. The body-computer system had malfunctioned because of the chemicals introduced to it. And so often we identify who we are with things that we appear to be in terms of our behavior, when actually it's just the body-computer program playing out. It's not who we are at all. Good habits, bad habits. How many times are good habits, bad habits, and all this stuff actually coming from the computer program, not from us? Does consciousness do good habits and bad habits? I'm not sure it does. So the way we decode reality depends to a very large extent on the state of the body computer. And the way that we live our lives depends on the way we identify who we are. And bringing this computer thing down to the brain, the brain has two hemispheres, the right brain and the left brain, with this corpus callosum bridge connecting the two. And they have very, very different roles to play in terms of reality. The left brain is where most people in this world live. It's where the education system is fundamentally designed, cold, calculatedly designed to put us. And that is the part of the brain that perceives everything as a part, that deals in language, that deals in structure. And if you look at the society that we live in, it is a left-brain structured society because it is structured by left-brain dominated people. When you go through the education system, the indoctrination system, what happens? You progress within it by taking information, overwhelmingly left-brain information, words and numbers, holding it in there and then regurgitating it out onto an exam paper. And the better you do that, the more you progress within the system. And if you're really good at that, you go to big universities, and then if you get really good at that again, you get good degrees, and you go into your specialization. Science, the law, often politics, and things like that. Medicine. And then you go through it in your specialization, in your exams. Same thing. And then the top ones progress into those positions of society that control the institutions of medicine and science and all the rest of it. And to have got there, they have to have become left-brain prisoners as a result of the system they've been through. The right brain is about connection out into the greater self. It's where we get creativity from and inspiration from. That's where the artist resides. Artistic people and creative people are much more right brain than most, and that's where they get their creativity from, because it connects them out into that realm of infinite creativity and potential. The idea, as with consciousness and mind, and this is very much symbolic of that, is to have that corpus callosum bridge passing information between the two so you get the best of both. That's not what the system wants. It doesn't want right-brained people. And to give you an example of the difference between the two, get my glasses on. This is a lady called Jill Bolte Taylor. She is a neuroanatomist, brain scientist for short. And she had an incredible experience in 1996 where she had a stroke, where she stayed conscious for a large amount of time while it was going on. And it was a stroke, a hemorrhage in the left brain. And being a neuroanatomist, she was able to follow the experience like most people would not be able to because of her knowledge. And this is her story. She said she got up, wasn't feeling too great, jumped onto my exercise machine, she said, and I'm jamming away on this thing, and I'm realizing that my hands look like primitive claws grasping onto the bar. I thought, that's very peculiar. And I looked down at my body and I thought, whoa, I'm a weird-looking thing. And it was as though my consciousness had shifted away from my normal perception of reality, where I'm the person on the machine having the experience, to some esoteric space where I'm witnessing myself having the experience. That's what consciousness does. When you move into consciousness, you start to witness the mind and observe the mind as it's working in its chatter instead of being the chatter. I looked down at my arm and I realized that I can no longer define the boundaries of my body. Because the left brain's shutting down, it's not decoding reality in the way it normally does, and so other levels of reality are able to be perceived because the decoding process is not affecting them. I looked down at my arm and I realized that I can no longer define the boundaries of my body. I can't define where I begin and where I end, because the atoms and the molecules of my arm blended with the atoms and molecules of the wall. And all I could detect was this energy. And I'm asking myself, what's wrong with me? What's going on? And in that moment, my brain chatter, my left hemisphere brain chatter, went totally silent. Just like someone took a remote control and pushed the mute button, and total silence. Because it's not decoding anymore, the chatter stops. And at first I was shocked to find myself inside a silent mind, but then I was immediately captivated by the magnificence of energy around me. And because I could no longer identify the boundaries of my body, I felt enormous and expansive. I felt at one with all the energy that was, and it was beautiful there. Then all of a sudden, my left hemisphere comes back online and says to me, hey, we got a problem, we got to get some help. So it's like, okay, I've got a problem. But then I immediately drifted right back into the consciousness, and I affectionately referred to this space as La La Land. It was beautiful there. Imagine what it would be like to be totally disconnected from your brain chatter that connects you with the external world. So here I am in this space, and any stress that related to me, to my job, it was gone. And I felt lighter in my body. And imagine all of the relationships in the external world and the many stresses related to any of those, they were gone. I felt a sense of peacefulness. See, all this stuff, all this stress, all this stuff that causes such grief and stops us from finding joy, it's all body-computer stuff. Not consciousness. I'm at the top. And imagine what it would feel like to lose 37 years of emotional baggage. Body-computer stuff. I felt euphoria. Euphoria was beautiful. And then my left hemisphere comes online and it says, hey, you've got to pay attention. We've got to get help. And I'm thinking, I've got to get help. I've got to focus. So I've got to call help. I've got to call work. I couldn't remember the number at work, so I remembered in my office I had a business card with a number on it. So I go to my business room, I pull out a 3-inch stack of business cards, and I'm looking at the card on top, and even though I could see clearly in my mind's eye what my business card looked like, I couldn't tell if this was my card or not, because all I could see was pixels. Because this is not decoding, the left brain's not decoding reality into this state that we perceive normally, now she's starting to see levels before that decoding process takes place, and it's pixels. Because on one level, as I keep saying, this reality is digital. And the pixels of the words blended with the pixels of the background and the pixels of the symbols, and I just couldn't tell. And I would wait for what I call a wave of clarity, and in that moment I would be able to reattach to normal reality, and I could tell that's not the card, that's not the card, that's not the card. It took me 45 minutes to get 1 inch inside that stack of cards. In the meantime, for 45 minutes, the hemorrhage is getting bigger in my left hemisphere. I do not understand numbers, I do not understand the telephone, but it's the only plan that I have. So I take the phone pad and I put it right here. I take the business card, I put it right here, and I'm trying to match the shape of the squiggles on the card to the shape of the squiggles on the phone pad. Eventually, the whole number gets dialed, and I'm listening to the phone, and my colleague picks up the phone, and he says to me, "Woof, woof, woof, woof." And I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, he sounds like a golden retriever. And so I say to him, clear in my mind, I say to him, "This is Jill, I need help." And what comes out of my voice is, "Woo, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh." And I'm thinking, oh my God, I sound like a golden retriever. And so I didn't know that I couldn't speak or understand language until I tried. Because when I speak now, what goes between my mouth and people's ears is a vibrational frequency. The brain, through the senses, decodes that into sound. And decodes it, the left brain decodes it into language. When it ceases to do that, we sound like a golden retriever because the process of decoding is not working as it should. And Jill Bolte-Taylor, thank goodness, made a full recovery. And if you go onto the internet and you put her name in, there's a 20-minute video in which she tells her story. She tells it very well indeed, because it gives so many insights into the nature and illusory nature of reality which she experienced. So when the two are working in unison, that's perfect. And when we take psychoactive drugs, that opens channels that are not normally open, and we have senses of reality that we don't normally experience. This is the key to the conspiracy on this level. So I asked Neil Haig to put soldiers across the entrance to the left brain, because that's what this society is doing. It's trying to hold us in the left brain state of reality, and so we do not access to the extent that we should this level of the side of the brain, which takes us out into another awareness. And, you know, when I talk at events like this, which attract people who are, at the very least, opening their minds, because we're all opening our minds, because it's a process, I just give it as I see it. But when I talk at places like the Oxford University, which I spoke at last year, I think it was last year, I'm talking to these elite Oxford students, thinking, how do I put this in baby steps so these people are going to get it? Serious. And I went there and I put it in baby steps, and some of them still didn't even get it, what I was trying to get across. Why? Because they are absolutely stuck in that. And that because of the nature of the process they've been through to become elite Oxford students, and as a result of that, that does not compute anything that comes into unity and the vaster vision of self. And where do the great elite Oxford students go to? They go into science, they go into politics, they go into law, they go into medicine. And that's why we have the society that we do. As this man said, an intellectual is someone whose mind watches itself. Someone who is conscious is someone whose consciousness watches the mind and sees the difference between the two. And the left brain prison is in so many ways the reason we live in an imprisoned global society. Breaking out of that is to open the door to freedom. Because then we're in this world, but we're not of it. And because that state is so different to the current norm, that's why those people stand out as they do. René Descartes, the French mathematician and philosopher, defining who we are, said, "I think, therefore I am." I would take that further and say, on that level of mind, it's "I compute, therefore I am." But there's another level beyond that which we'll come to. And so, because the body is a computer, especially vulnerable when it's disconnected from consciousness, it can be programmed. And what the population of the world is being subjected to all the time, from within the inner sanctum of this conspiracy, beyond the Bushes and the Obamas, the people you never see, they know how this system works, and they structure society to exploit it. And therefore, we're being subjected constantly to mass hypnosis, getting us to see the world in a certain way by programming the way the brain reads reality. This guy, Paul McKenna, I'm sure he's known in Australia, he's known in Britain very much, and also increasingly in America. And he's made his name by getting people onto television programs who have phobias and all the other stuff. And at the end of the program, when he's taken them away and done certain things to them, they either have much less extreme phobia or no phobia at all. And what he's doing, in effect, is deleting the hard drive. He's deleting the program in the mind that manifests as that phobia. This is how extreme it can get. On this program, Top Gear, very, very popular in Britain, they had Paul McKenna on. He's in the background there. And they had this guy, Richard Hammond, here. And they took him out, and Richard Hammond thought he was just going to take this Paul McKenna around the track in a car. But what he couldn't remember, because that's what happens with mind control, is that Paul McKenna had told his mind, or hypnotized his mind, that every time he said a certain word or flicked his fingers, this guy, Richard Hammond, was just going to go unconscious. And then he would be told things, and then he would react. So they're standing outside this car, and they're just chatting away normally, and suddenly McKenna says whatever he said, keyword, trigger word, and Hammond goes, And he said to him, when you wake up, you're not going to know how to drive a car. Gets in the car, he doesn't know where to put this key to start the bloody thing. Because his mind's decoding system has been intervened in to program that state of being. They then come back in the studio, and Hammond's having a laugh, and he thinks it's all very funny, and he thinks it's over, except that the programming's still in there. So they're sitting there live in the studio, and they're chatting away, and McKenna does his thing again, and Hammond goes, And he tells Hammond that this car, this toy car, is his real 911 Turbo or something. And he goes across, and he gets in the car, acting as if it's his car. And then this other guy comes in another toy car and smacks him in the side. And Hammond reacts as if his real car's just been smacked. That's the power that you can program the body computer with, and that's what's happening to the human race all the time. We are, those that are not waking up, we are in a hypnotic trance. And that's why people can't see the bloody obvious. Try telling Richard Hammond that wasn't his real car. When you're in a hypnotic stage show, and I've been to many researching this, try telling the guy that he's not seeing an elephant in the audience. As Voltaire said, so long as the people do not care to exercise their freedom, those who wish to tyrannize will do so, for tyrants are active and ardent and will devote themselves in the name of any number of gods, religious or otherwise, to put shackles upon sleeping men. And so putting us to sleep hypnotically is fundamental to it. And that's why this phrase, people are waking up, is so absolutely accurate. That's what we're doing. We're waking up from the trance. And when the guy who thinks there's an elephant in the audience wakes up from the trance, there's no elephant anymore. He can see reality in a different way. It's about keeping us in a hypnotic state. And here's a hypnotist. Television, that people don't know it, 99.9% of them don't know it anyway, they are hypnotists. They are implanting into the mind, through a real powerful form of mind control called repetition, a version of the world and reality that, if we take it on, puts us all in the same norm of perception. All the time, 24/7, wherever you go. Me, 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 me. Same repeating things. 19 hijackers who couldn't fly Cessnas suddenly manifested the ability to fly wide-bodied jets. Over and don't know where it came from, honey, but they just managed to, they must have read a book. And then you have, in America, on the left, they are Democratic supporting news presenters, and these in Fox, of course, are far, far right-wing supporting presenters, and they are apparently putting different points of view, but together they see the system in the same way. They just want to come from it from a slightly different angle. And that is constantly mind controlling the body computer to believe that there are sides in the world and there are differences and stuff, and take us away from the understanding that behind it all, there's one force manipulating through all sides. Then you've got people like Jon Stewart. Some of his shows are very funny, and this guy, Bill Maher. These are perceived to be, I call them steam whistles. You let off a bit of steam and frustration because they have fun and satirize the political system, but only to a point. So he'll satirize, but as soon as he gets someone in the studio, like Tony Blair a few months ago, he basically licks his backside instead of asking serious questions, which he's asking when the guy isn't there. Come on. And Bill Maher, why he's against, ridiculing the system and all that, and politicians, he vehemently attacks anyone who says that 9/11 was not, the official story was not true. And so all these different forms and media of all different kinds, and sometimes they seem to be different, are all selling you basically the same belief system on the way the system works. And as a result of this mind control technique called repeating, so many people believe things they've never checked, never asked about, never questioned in any way, but because it's the norm, because everyone believes it, it becomes their truth. Oscar Wilde, great English writer, said, most people are other people. Their thoughts are someone else's opinions, their lives are mimicry, their passions are quotation. That's what happens when we just repeat without question. We have teacher repeaters who just repeat what they are told to tell the children and what they learn themselves in their academic life and in teacher training. We have doctor repeaters that just repeat what the drug companies tell them and what they learned at medical schools. Medical schools can, well, I'll perhaps even be right the first time. Medical schools controlled by the drug companies. We have scientist repeaters repeating the bloody nonsense that a tiny, tiny greenhouse gas called carbon dioxide from human form somehow is transforming the bloody climate of the planet. Repeat, repeat, repeat. But classically, journalist repeaters just repeating the official story and calling it journalism, no questions asked. Politician repeaters. I love this one. They've been bent over for so long they think it's standing up. Politician repeaters. I mean, you question politicians about climate change. You know, have you ever done any research into it? No, but it's what the scientists say. So we're passing this legislation. You ever thought about checking it? No. Repeaters, repeaters, repeaters. And then we have people repeaters who take it from these sources and then repeat it among themselves. And then if someone challenges that repetition version of reality, they get ridiculed and condemned for the crime of being different. And a few people can't control the world. It's a piece of cake, given the way things are. And this is why the authorities want to stop people talking publicly in ways that are at odds with the mainstream belief of repeating. This is why so-called visionaries have always been seen as dangerous by the authority of the day, because they're offering another possibility of reality that is at odds with the one reality that tyrannies and dictators always want the public to believe. So all these sources are constantly programming the body computer, the mind, with the version of reality that the system wants, and therefore giving us this false identity that keeps us in servitude. As this man said, we see things not as they are, but as we are. because as we are dictates how we decode reality and therefore perceive experience. The mind sees everything in terms of division. So when we're in mind, we're in a society of division. When we are in the now consciousness, that sees everything as one, because that's what consciousness is. The infinite I. So who do we think we are? We think we're humans. But who are we? We are consciousness. And to perceive reality and live our lives from those two perspectives brings a dramatic difference in the way we see ourselves and life. Okay, move along. Where are we? We're in a virtual reality universe, which only exists in our head in the physical sense that we perceive. We are decoding vibrational and electrical information into this apparently physical world that only exists in this form in our heads. One level it's digital, and like I say, electrical signals decoded by our brain. So that's where this world actually resides. And it's understandable. I'm standing here now, and everything seems to be outside of me. Everything seems to be out there, but that's an optical illusion. Everything is not out there. It's in here in terms of the physical world. It is within us. Everything is within us. So this age-old line that goes right the way back through the ages, what we call the ages, to go within, is a stunningly accurate truth. Because this is where this is projected from. And see, what the system wants, and one of the key benefits from the system's point of view for us believing that everything's out there, is it wants us to believe that if we don't like what's out there, or what we perceive to be out there, we must change it out there. But there is no out there, so if we're going to change it out there, we're trying to change symbolically, not even symbolically, very accurately, we're trying to change a movie by screaming at the screen. It's not going to change. The movie's just going to run. We've got to go within and find the projector and what's projecting the movie and change that, and then the movie must change. This can only change when this changes. Because by the time it hits the screen and becomes this holographic reality, this illusory physical reality, it's a done deal. It's a done deal. There's no changing it now. There's no changing the movie when it hits the screen. It's done. We've got to change it before it hits the screen. And that means going within to the deeper levels of ourselves where we decode this stuff and therefore change it. Everything that we see is just in our head. Everything, friends, family, in the physical way, everything is in our heads and produced digitally in the end. And it's a virtual reality. On many ways, it works with the same binary system, though it's far more sophisticated, that you find in computer systems, on-off electrical charges. The binary system, although it's more sophisticated in other parts of the brain as well. And again, just like DNA, where the O's and the 1s are in relation to each other decides what appears on the screen. Same with DNA. Everything is information. Everything is information being decoded. And it's being decoded in a desperately narrow band of frequencies. We look out and we think we're seeing this vastness. And again, on one level, it does seem like that. But actually, it's a frequency range that's so tiny, it's funny. Even mainstream science says that of the mass matter that exists in this universe in various forms, the electromagnetic spectrum is 0.005% of what they perceive to exist in this universe. Visible light, which is the only frequency range that our eyes can access and allows our brain to decode into this reality, is a fraction of the 0.005%. As someone rightly said, humans are basically blind because we're operating on such a narrow frequency. This is like just a three-dimensional television station. And beyond this are other television stations which can interact with this one. That's what we call paranormal activity in many ways. We'll get into that in the second section. And so we're decoding this tiny range of frequencies into this reality. We say seeing is believing, but believing is seeing. Because how we decode reality decides on how we see reality, because it all takes place in the brain, the way the neurons fire and all the rest of it. And one of the things they found in experiments, I was seeing a film about this a couple of years ago, is that when you get a rigid belief system, the neurons fire in a certain network. And what that does is filter reality in relation to the way that network is firing. So when you get information coming into the brain that is at odds with the rigid belief system, those neuron pathways will fire in a certain way and will not decode that information in a way that affects the belief system. It's like just a filter that just only filters reality in a certain way. And then when you shift your belief system, the neuron networks, as before, break up and they fire in a different way. So belief systems are fundamental to filtering reality to perpetuate themselves. This is our base reality. We are energy. And it's only when we pass through the decoding system of the brain that we appear in our heads as three-dimensional physical bodies. And we can get right out there to many dimensions, which is what psychics do and people in consciousness do, or we can live in the record groove, going round and round and round. And of course, this is the thing about science. Scientists are themselves decoding reality according to their belief system. And so they're trying to understand how something works, but their belief system is decoding reality in a certain way. And so they never get it. When scientists are stuck in the left brain, they cannot decode these greater levels of reality and understanding of reality because the brain will not compute them. That's why they really look at people who say some of this stuff and they go, "You're crazy. Can't be." Because they can't get their heads around it. And it's like in pantomimes we have in Britain at Christmas, where, you know, one of the classic things they do is someone standing on the stage and someone will come behind them and the audience will say, "He's behind you." And then they'll turn around and the person will go with them and they'll say, "There's nobody there." And that's what scientists are doing, because they're looking at things and they're decoding them in a certain way and they can't see them because their brain won't compute it. And this is why the cutting-edge scientists are the ones that have a right brain that is active. And that's what a lot of people at the cutting edge of things like quantum physics are developing. Right brain view. As Einstein said, science without religion is lame, religion without science is blind. I would say this: science without consciousness is lame, religion without consciousness is blind. And indeed, with consciousness, there is no religion. Okay, final bit before we have a break. The holographic internet. This is what this reality is, in effect. And like I said a long time ago now, technology today is starting to mirror, in a much less sophisticated way, of course, but it's starting to mirror the reality we're experiencing. If you say to someone, "Tell me about the internet," they'd say it's graphics and websites and words and colors on a screen. Yes, it is. But the only place the internet exists in that form is on the screen. Everywhere else, it is electrical circuits and what have you. It's not what's on the screen. That's only just there, nowhere else. And you say to people, "Tell me about television." They say, "Oh, it's moving pictures on a screen." Yes, it is. But the only place television exists in that form is on the screen. Everywhere else, it's electronic circuits and frequency fields and all the rest of it. And it's the same with us. The only place this world exists is on the screen. And so many people over the years, scientists and what have you, have offered the possibility that this world only exists in this form when it's observed. Well, from the understanding we're getting now, that's exactly what it is. You know, when you play a DVD, it doesn't play the whole DVD on the screen. It plays that part of the DVD that is being read at that time. And what we're doing is, in the act of observation, we are decoding that part of the vibrational construct into this world, but only the part that we're actually observing. And if you could see the unobserved reality that we're experiencing at its prime level, it would just be vibrational, not solid or anything at all. So what is the matrix, as we call it? It is energetic information being read in various ways to create this illusory, vast, apparently infinite but not, world of solidity. And the other thing, key, that the body is, because it's many things, it's a fantastic creation. It is a crystalline receiver-transmitter, because that's how the decoding system works. We are decoding information, because people say, okay, if we're creating our own reality and all that stuff, how come we're all seeing the same theater now? Because there is a construct, like I call it the cosmic internet, which exists in vibrational form, which we are collectively decoding into this collective reality. You know, you go on the internet in South Africa or Sydney or London or China, or not so much China, but another place where they don't firewall it off, and you're seeing the same, experiencing the same collective reality, although you're in different parts of the world. Now, you can go to different websites, or you can go to the same website, and you might have different views of that website. That's your individual spin on this collective reality, but you're all experiencing the same collective reality on the World Wide Web. This reality is the same. There's a collective reality which we decode, so we all look out the window, we'll see the same car going past, but we'll all have a different opinion on what we think of that car. The basic reality is the same. And we're crystalline. Do you know, we have trillions and trillions of cells, and every single cell membrane is made of a crystalline substance. We are crystal, walking, talking crystals. And incidentally, the crystalline membrane and the outside of the cell has gates and channels which open according to electrical on-off charges, the binary system. Because it works on the same computer system, or basically. And this is interesting too, because these gates and channels open to let in stuff that's good for the cells and shut out things that are bad for the cells. And they open and shut according to electrical charges, which operate in the way they should, left to their own devices. But when you are subjected, as we are now, to massive amounts of electromagnetic fields, etc., these things can open and shut when they shouldn't be, let the bad stuff in and shut the good stuff out. So we are crystals decoding. And the DNA itself is crystalline, and because of its very shape, is an antennae. This is an article about this I got off the internet. From the characteristic form of this giant molecule, a wound double helix, the DNA represents an ideal electromagnetic antennae. On one hand, it is elongated and thus a blade which can take up very well electrical pulses. On the other hand, seen from above, it has the form of a ring and is thus a very magnetical antennae. So we are receiver transmitters. This Don Juan, the shaman source of the Carlos Castaneda books, absolutely encapsulated the whole thing when he said, we are perceivers, we are awareness, we are not objects, we have no solidity, we are boundless. We, or rather our reason, mind, forget this, and thus we entrap the totality of ourselves in a vicious circle from which we rarely emerge in our lifetime. Receiver transmitters. And this is where this comes in. I'll get more into this in the second section. Manipulation by word. Destabilization of the body, computer, and transmitter receiver by the poison shite that they put in food and drink. Through belief systems like religion, through misrepresentation of reality, through education, they're all seeking, and this is when you get behind the people, into to those levels where they really know how this works. This is what they're targeting. They're targeting all the time our ability to decode reality in the full breadth, sharpness, and clarity that it should be, and put us in these vibrational boxes and eggshells, and therefore put us in this world of total bewilderment where we don't know what the hell's going on, who we are, or what the bloody game is. And so we're connected to this holographic internet. It's got kind of, wires here, but it's not like that. This reality, the one that we are decoding into this apparently physical world, has its mirror now in the wireless internet. If this theater has got the wireless internet, I can't see it. Where is it? Nowhere, apparently. But I could tune this computer to the internet, and out of nothingness, what we can't see, would come the World Wide Web on this screen. That's what we're doing. In the reality that we think is nothing, we're actually decoding a vibrational information, the wireless internet, into this reality, which again comes back to the Matrix movie, very accurate. The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around you, even now in this very room. You can see it when you look out of your window or you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? That you are a slave, Neo. Like everyone else, you were born into bondage, born into a prison you cannot smell, taste, or touch. A prison for your mind. Where does this universe exist in terms of its physicality? It exists in the wireless vibrational construct that our brains decode into this. And we can decode it in a way where we get to many, many levels of reality, or, this is the key of the manipulation, we can access only a fraction of it. And that's what they do in China. They firewall off the Chinese computer system so it can only access a limited part of the World Wide Web and therefore not access what the authorities don't want them to understand. In so many ways, that's what is happening to us all the time. In the way that we are manipulated into the box of perception, it's firewalling us off from the information, knowledge, and understanding that is there if we were left to our natural state. We've gone from connection to all that is, and slowly but surely, the mind has been turned into the governor. Turned into the governor of our reality. And we've been put into bubbles. Operate within little bubbles, within big bubbles, but operating in a fraction of our true potential. And if that didn't happen, there would be no way in the world that the few could control the many and enslave billions of people as they do. So what is reality? It is the range of frequencies that we are decoding and how we are decoding them. I'll just tell you this story very quickly to kind of sum up everything I'm saying. In this book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Tolbert, he tells a story. It's a great book. He tells the story of something he experienced where he's at a party which his father organized, and he had a stage hypnotist along. And he's getting them to do party tricks and all that stuff, getting them to eat a potato and think it's an apple. How does he do that? He implants the belief in the decoding system that it's an apple, and therefore the person eats a potato, but that electrical signal is decoded as an apple because that's what the decoding system has been manipulated to do. Now imagine that over the range of society and everyday life, because that's what's happening to us all the time. But he got this guy called Tom, who was at the party, and he sat him down, and he got him to do various things. And then towards the end, he said to him, when I bring you back to a waking state, you're not going to be able to see your daughter in the room. And when before he brought him back, he brought the daughter, and he stood the daughter in front of her father, so her father's looking into her belly. And then he brings him back, apparently, to a waking state, and he says to him, can you see your daughter in the room, Tom? He's looking around. No, I can't see her. Not here. People are giggling. She's giggling. You can't hear them. Or hear her, anyway. And then the hypnotist went behind the daughter, and he put his hand in the small of her back, and he said, Tom, I'm holding something. What am I holding? Daughter's here, Tom's here. He looks at him bewildered because it's obvious. He says, you're holding a watch. He says, there's an inscription on the watch. Can you read it? He peered forward, read the inscription. His daughter's here. Now, if you explain that to people, explain that to a mainstream scientist. You say, impossible, stupid, crazy. No. The only place that his daughter existed in that physical form was in his head when it was decoded into that form. Before the decoding happens, she is just energy, an energetic form, consciousness in that way. And so if he, because the implanted belief was so well done that it affected his ability to decode that, and the brain didn't code that energy field, he didn't bring his daughter into the level that his eyes can perceive, what we call physical level. And so everything else in the room existed in the physical because he decoded that, but not the daughter. And because the daughter wasn't there, he could see what was behind her. And when you see the levels to which the mind can be manipulated, and you think that the people behind this conspiracy understand that, then you can see how easy it is as long as we don't understand this information. The world seems solid, seems very solid, but it can't be, because the world's made of atoms, and atoms have no solidity. As someone pointed out, if you take an atom to be the size of a cathedral, then the nucleus in the center of the atom would be the size of a 10-cent piece. The rest of it is empty space. How can empty space, just an energetic, non-solid thing, become the solid world? It can't be. And quantum physicists, how can that be? Atoms have no solidity, but the world's solid. How can they? It's just the decoding process. That's all it is. And that's what they miss. That it's in our heads. And the world, I'll finish on this bit. The world is a hologram, a gigantic hologram. That's what the universe is. And everything within it, including us on the physical level, are holograms. And we see holograms, of course, in our everyday experience in the shops and stuff. And for people who haven't come across it, how they make them, where something appears three-dimensional but isn't, is by taking a laser beam, breaking part of it off, and it goes across the object they want to photograph. And what it does is it picks up a vibrational version of that object. Another part of the laser beam goes directly onto, or virtually directly onto, a photographic print. And then this part of the laser beam that's gone across the object is directed back onto the same photographic print, and the two laser beams hit each other. What this creates is what they call an interference pattern. And it's like dropping two stones in a pond, and as the waves come out and hit each other, that waveform is a waveform version of those two stones, where they fell, how fast, and all the rest of it. Exactly the same interference pattern. This is a holographic photographic print of an interference pattern, which looks very much like fingerprints, interestingly. But when you fire a laser at this photographic print, this interference pattern, which is a vibrational version of the object that's been photographed, suddenly, out of nowhere, comes a three-dimensional, or apparently three-dimensional form, which, the best of them, can look totally solid, except you can put your hand through them because they're not solid at all. All these are holograms. Hello, Mom. This is a landscape. That's not a very good one, but it gives the feel of it. These are holograms. These are virtual reality games, which give the three-dimensional feel. And so the three-dimensional world that we think we live in It's just an illusion made up of holographic images which appear solid, because that's the way we decode them, but aren't really. The world is vibrational, and we decode it into the physical when we observe it. It's a construct. It's illusory. It's like when that Neo character in the Matrix went into a higher state of consciousness, he saw beyond the physical to that which is behind it. And interestingly, this is January's New Scientist, one of the most prestigious mainstream science magazines in Britain, just a few months ago, and the front page is, "You are a hologram projected from the edge of the universe." Even mainstream scientists, some of them are starting to realize this, except when you read the article, they missed the point massively. It's not projected from the edge of the universe at all. It's going on inside us. And interestingly, holograms have an amazing characteristic. Every part of the hologram is a smaller version of the whole. And so if you take a holographic print, and you cut it into 4, and you fire the laser at the 4 pieces, you don't get a quarter-size part of the whole picture when you do that. You get a quarter-size version of the whole picture. Every part of the hologram is a smaller version of the whole wherever you go. And that's why we have this stuff in alternative healing. That's why reflexologists can find parts of the hands and the feet and other parts of the body that relate to the body as a whole. They can find a place that connects with the heart, that connects with the liver. That's why acupuncture can find points on the ear which represent and connect with different parts of the body. Because every part of the body is a smaller version of the whole body. And in the same way, every single part of this universe, whether it's an ant, a person, a tree, a blade of grass, a breath of air, in the end is a smaller version of the super hologram that I call it, which is the universe as a whole. Work. There you go. I met this guy, Harvey Biggleton, in America a few months ago, and he wrote this book called Holographic Blood. And he showed me through a microscope my own blood massively blown up through the microscope, and there were holographic pieces in it. Holographic parts of my body in it. I could see it. "Oh, you got a problem there," he said. 3-dimensional forms. That's why we have this saying, "as above, so below." That's why the human energy field operates in the same basic way as the energy field of the earth, and so on and so on. It's because every part of the hologram is a smaller version of the whole. So we are, even on this physical level, we are the bloody universe, and the universe is us. My God, we've come a long way since Ethel Jones and Charlie Bloody Smith. It's a miracle. What are miracles? How can the illusion of fire burn the illusion of physicality? It can't unless we believe it can. And when we move ourselves into another state of consciousness, another state of reality, we can walk through fire without being burned, because our belief system changes, and therefore our experience changes. That great line in the Matrix, "It's not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself." Of course it is, because you're decoding the spoon into physicality. You're deciding if it bends or not. And it's all about going beyond rules by becoming conscious. What we call the rules and laws of physics, or the rules of limitation, come from mind. Consciousness, when you get really into consciousness, can overcome the illusory laws of physics, the illusory laws of this reality. This is a line from the Matrix. I've seen agents punch through a concrete wall. Men have emptied entire clips at them and hit nothing but air. And yet their strength and their speed are still based in a world that is based on rules, mind. Because of that, they will never be as strong or as fast as you can be. And who was you symbolic of? He's the one. Consciousness, the one. That's what we are, consciousness. And because we've been manipulated to forget that, we live in a world of enslavement and imposition. When we realize who we are, those days are over, and we are now beginning to realize who we are. I'll be back in 1 hour. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.